The Little Seed's Journey. Chapter 1. The Awakening. Once upon a time, a small seed lived in the ground. The seed was quiet and still, resting beneath the warm soil. One day, the sun shone bright and the rain fell softly. The seed woke up. It was warm and wet. Slowly, the seed started to grow. First, the seed grew small roots. The roots went down into the soil. They drank water and held the seed tight. Then, the seed grew a tiny green shoot. The shoot pushed up through the dirt. It reached for the sky. Chapter 2. New Friends in the Garden. Days passed, and the little seed grew taller. It grew leaves that danced in the wind. Birds sang in the trees. The seed was now a small plant. It felt happy and free. One sunny morning, a curious ladybug named Lily landed on the plant's leaf. "Hello," said Lily. "You're growing fast." The plant felt proud and stretched its leaves higher. Soon, a family of ants marched by, carrying food. They cheered the plant on. "Grow big and strong," they said. The plant also met Benny the butterfly, who fluttered around its leaves. Benny told stories of faraway gardens and colorful flowers. The plant dreamed of growing tall enough to see the whole world. Chapter 3. The Stormy Night. One day, dark clouds gathered in the sky. The wind blew hard. Rain poured down. The plant was scared. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. But its roots were strong. It stood tall and waited. Soon, the sun came back. The plant smiled and grew more. A rainbow painted the sky, and the plant felt braver than ever. Chapter 4. The Curious Squirrel. As the plant grew, a playful squirrel named Nibbles began to visit. Nibbles would jump from branch to branch, making the plant laugh. "You're my favorite tree," the squirrel said. The plant enjoyed the company and loved listening to Nibbles' tales of hidden treasures. Chapter 5. The Secret Tunnel. One morning, the plant heard whispers underground. The ants were digging a new tunnel. "What are you building?" asked the plant. A safe path to carry food during storms, the ants replied. The plant admired their hard work and offered shade to cool them during hot days. Chapter 6: Blossoms and Visitors. Seasons changed. The plant grew beautiful flowers. Bees and butterflies came to visit. Benny returned, bringing more friends. The flowers turned into fruit. Inside the fruit were many small seeds. Birds and animals enjoyed the sweet fruit, spreading the seeds far and wide. Chapter 7: A Place for All. The little seed was now a big tree. It gave shade and food. Birds built nests in its branches. Children played under it. The tree was strong and kind. On warm summer days, families sat under its shade, laughing and sharing stories. Chapter 8: The Forest Festival. One day, the forest animals planned a festival to celebrate the tree. Lanterns hung from its branches, and music filled the air. Lily the ladybug, Benny the butterfly, and Nibbles the squirrel danced joyfully. The tree felt loved and proud to be a home for so many. Chapter 9: Passing the Wisdom. As years passed, the tree grew older. It shared its wisdom with young saplings nearby. Be strong, be kind, and grow with joy, the tree advised. The saplings listened carefully, eager to grow tall and kind. Chapter 10: The Endless Journey. And so, the little seed's journey was complete. But new seeds waited to grow. The story would begin again, full of wonder and joy. Birds carried seeds to distant lands. The wind spread them across hills and valleys. Each seed dreamed of becoming a mighty tree. The journey never truly ends. It continues with every new seed, every gentle breeze, and every drop of rain. The little seed's journey. Chapter 1: The Awakening. Once upon a time, a small seed lived in the ground. The seed was quiet and still, resting beneath the warm soil. One day, the sun shone bright and the rain fell softly. The seed woke up. It was warm and wet. Slowly, the seed started to grow. First, the seed grew small roots. The roots went down into the soil. They drank water and held the seed tight. Then, the seed grew a tiny green shoot. The shoot pushed up through the dirt. It reached for the sky. Chapter 2: New Friends in the Garden. Days passed, and the little seed grew taller. It grew leaves that danced in the wind. Birds sang in the trees. The seed was now a small plant. It felt happy and free. One sunny morning, a curious ladybug named Lily landed on the plant's leaf. "Hello," said Lily. "You're growing fast." The plant felt proud and stretched its leaves higher. Soon, a family of ants marched by, carrying food. They cheered the plant on. "Grow big and strong," they said. The plant also met Benny the butterfly, who fluttered around its leaves. Benny told stories of faraway gardens and colorful flowers. The plant dreamed of growing tall enough to see the whole world. Chapter 3: The Stormy Night. One day, dark clouds gathered in the sky. The wind blew hard. Rain poured down. The plant was scared. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. But its roots were strong. It stood tall and waited. Soon, the sun came back. The plant smiled and grew more. A rainbow painted the sky, and the plant felt braver than ever. Chapter 4: The Curious Squirrel. As the plant grew, a playful squirrel named Nibbles began to visit. Nibbles would jump from branch to branch, making the plant laugh. "You're my favorite tree," the squirrel said. The plant enjoyed the company and loved listening to Nibbles' tales of hidden treasures. Chapter 5: The Secret Tunnel. One morning, the plant heard whispers underground. The ants were digging a new tunnel. "What are you building?" asked the plant. "A safe path to carry food during storms," the ants replied. The plant admired their hard work and offered shade to cool them during hot days. Chapter 6: Blossoms and Visitors. Seasons changed. The plant grew beautiful flowers. Bees and butterflies came to visit. Benny returned, bringing more friends. The flowers turned into fruit. Inside the fruit were many small seeds. Birds and animals enjoyed the sweet fruit, spreading the seeds far and wide. Chapter 7. A Place for All. The little seed was now a big tree. It gave shade and food. Birds built nests in its branches. Children played under it. The tree was strong and kind. On warm summer days, families sat under its shade, laughing and sharing stories. Chapter 8. The Forest Festival. One day, the forest animals planned a festival to celebrate the tree. Lanterns hung from its branches, and music filled the air. Lily the ladybug, Benny the butterfly, and Nibbles the squirrel danced joyfully. The tree felt loved and proud to be a home for so many. Chapter 9. Passing the Wisdom. As years passed, the tree grew older. It shared its wisdom with young saplings nearby. Be strong, be kind, and grow with joy, the tree advised. The saplings listened carefully, eager to grow tall and kind. Chapter 10. The Endless Journey. And so, the little seed's journey was complete. But new seeds waited to grow. The story would begin again, full of wonder and joy. Birds carried seeds to distant lands. The wind spread them across hills and valleys. Each seed dreamed of becoming a mighty tree. The journey never truly ends. It continues with every new seed, every gentle breeze, and every drop of rain. Title: The Bright Balloon Adventure. Chapter 1. The Mysterious Balloon. One sunny afternoon in the quiet town of Willow Springs, Max walked through the park with his younger sister Ella. The park was alive with children playing, birds singing, and the scent of flowers in the air. Max noticed something unusual tied to a bench near the pond. It was a bright, shiny balloon, much bigger than any balloon he had ever seen. Its surface shimmered under the sun, reflecting a rainbow of colors. Ella reached for the string attached to the balloon, intrigued by its unique appearance. The balloon seemed perfectly still, yet something about it felt alive, as though it carried a story waiting to be told. Max hesitated, unsure if they should take it, but curiosity kept them rooted in place. Chapter 2. An Unexpected Lift. When Ella held the string tightly, the balloon began to tug gently, as if encouraging her to follow. Max decided to join, gripping the string as well. To their amazement, the balloon lifted slightly, pulling them off the ground. They found themselves hovering above the park, with the ground slowly shrinking beneath them. The sensation of floating was surreal. They rose higher, over the rooftops and trees, the whole town becoming a patchwork of colors. The cool breeze added to the excitement, and soon, they found themselves soaring among the clouds. The balloon seemed to have a purpose, guiding them toward an unknown destination. Chapter 3. Above the Clouds. As they ascended, the clouds thinned, revealing a breathtaking view. The horizon stretched endlessly, and they could see rivers glistening like silver threads and forests spreading like green carpets. The peace of the moment was overwhelming. They felt as though they had stepped into another world, far from the ordinary days in Willow Springs. The balloon began to slow, descending slightly toward an area with floating patches of land. These airborne islands were dotted with vibrant flowers and waterfalls that seemed to vanish into the sky. Birds with radiant feathers glided effortlessly, and the air smelled faintly of honey and fresh rain. Chapter 4. A Hidden Village. The balloon guided Max and Ella to a small village nestled on one of the floating islands. The houses were built from materials that looked like a mix of wood and glass, reflecting sunlight in a kaleidoscope of colors. The villagers, who seemed to live in harmony with their surroundings, greeted Max and Ella with a mix of curiosity and kindness. The village elder approached them, explaining that the balloon was a rare artifact, known to seek out those with kind hearts. According to the elder, the balloon had a history of leading people to places in need of help or discovery. Max and Ella were told they might be part of something bigger than they had imagined. Chapter 5. An Important Task. While in the village, Max and Ella learned about the challenges faced by the floating islands. A powerful storm had damaged one of the bridges connecting the islands, making travel and trade difficult. Without the bridge, the villagers were struggling to share their resources. The balloon, it seemed, had brought Max and Ella here to lend their assistance. Determined to help, Max and Ella worked alongside the villagers to rebuild the bridge. Using simple but effective techniques, they constructed a sturdy structure from the materials available. The process was hard but rewarding, and they grew closer to the villagers through shared effort. Chapter 6. The Storm Returns. Just as the bridge was nearing completion, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The villagers grew anxious, recalling the previous storm that had caused so much damage. Max and Ella realized that the storm might undo all their hard work. They decided to stay and face the storm, determined to protect the bridge and the village. As the storm approached, Max and Ella helped the villagers secure their homes and the newly built bridge. The wind roared and rain fell in heavy sheets, but their preparations held strong. Max and Ella stood together, drenched but resolute, as the storm raged on. Chapter 7. A Brighter Sky. When the storm finally passed, the village was intact, and the bridge had survived. The villagers celebrated, their gratitude shining as brightly as the sun breaking through the clouds. The elder praised Max and Ella for their courage and determination, saying their actions had strengthened the bond among the villagers. The balloon, which had stayed anchored during the storm, floated gently toward Max and Ella. It seemed ready to take them back home. The villagers waved goodbye, thanking them once more for their kindness and bravery. Chapter 8. Returning to Willow Springs. The balloon carried Max and Ella back over the clouds, retracing their journey. As they descended toward the park, they felt a deep sense of accomplishment and wonder. They landed softly near the bench where their adventure had begun, the balloon hovering for a moment before disappearing into the sky. Max and Ella walked home, their hearts full of memories of the floating village and the bonds they had formed. They knew they had been part of something extraordinary, a story they would carry with them forever. Title: The Hidden Forest Discovery. Chapter 1. The Forgotten Trail. Early one summer morning, Sarah set out on a walk in the woods behind her grandmother's house. The woods stretched for miles, dense with tall trees and covered in a blanket of moss and ferns. Sarah had always loved the woods, but she had never dared to explore too far. That day, however, curiosity tugged at her, and she decided to follow a narrow trail she had never noticed before. The trail wound deeper into the forest, twisting and turning as it disappeared into shadows. Birds chirped overhead, and the air smelled of pine and earth. As Sarah walked, she noticed that the forest seemed quieter here, as though it held secrets waiting to be discovered. She stopped to examine the trail and realized that the ground was covered with old, worn stones arranged in a pattern, as if it had once been a path. Chapter 2. The Strange Clearing. After what felt like hours of walking, Sarah emerged into a clearing unlike anything she had ever seen. The trees formed a perfect circle, their trunks covered in ivy that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. At the center of the clearing stood an ancient fountain, its stone edges cracked with age. Water trickled softly from the mouth of a carved lion's head into a pool below. Sarah approached the fountain and noticed symbols etched into the stone. They were unfamiliar but beautiful, spiraling in intricate designs. She knelt to touch the water, which was cool and clear. As her fingers brushed the surface, a soft hum filled the air, like the sound of wind through leaves. Looking around, Sarah noticed that the clearing seemed untouched by time. Flowers she couldn't name grew in clusters, their petals glowing faintly. She felt a sense of calm and wonder, as though she had stepped into another world. Chapter 3. The Hidden Map. Near the fountain, Sarah found an old wooden box, half buried beneath the ivy. Pulling it free, she opened it to reveal a rolled-up piece of parchment. The parchment was aged and brittle, its edges frayed. Carefully, she unrolled it and saw that it was a map. The map showed the forest, with landmarks marked in delicate ink. One symbol, resembling the fountain, was at the center, and a winding line led to a point marked with an X. Sarah's heart raced. She wondered what could be hidden at the marked location. Taking the map, she decided to follow its path. The excitement of the discovery filled her with determination, and she stepped back onto the trail. Chapter 4. The Silent Woods. As Sarah followed the map, the forest grew denser. The trees towered higher, their branches weaving into a canopy that blocked much of the sunlight. The air was cooler here, and the usual sounds of the forest seemed muted. The path became less defined, and Sarah had to rely on the map to navigate. She climbed over fallen logs and pushed through thick undergrowth. Along the way, she found carvings on some of the trees, similar to the symbols on the fountain. The carvings seemed to guide her, confirming that she was on the right track. The deeper she went, the more she felt a connection to the forest, as if it were alive and watching her. Despite the eerie silence, she felt no fear, only anticipation. Chapter 5. The Hidden Doorway. Eventually, Sarah arrived at the location marked on the map. It was a grove surrounded by towering oaks. At the base of one tree, she found a wooden door set into the trunk. The door was small, barely large enough for her to crawl through, and it was decorated with the same symbols she had seen before. Taking a deep breath, Sarah pushed the door open. It creaked slightly, revealing a narrow tunnel that sloped downward. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside, her curiosity stronger than her caution. The tunnel was dimly lit by glowing moss that lined the walls, casting a soft green light. Chapter 6. The Hidden Chamber. The tunnel opened into a large chamber underground. The walls were lined with shelves filled with books, jars, and strange artifacts. At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal holding a crystal orb that pulsed faintly with light. Sarah approached the pedestal and noticed a plaque beneath the orb. The plaque's inscription read, "To the seeker who finds this place, knowledge and wonder await." Sarah reached out and touched the orb. Images flooded her mind, scenes of the forest as it had been long ago, with people tending the land and living in harmony with nature. She saw how the clearing and fountain had been a gathering place for a long-forgotten community. The orb seemed to share their history, as if it were alive with memories. Chapter 7. A New Purpose. After spending hours exploring the chamber, Sarah understood that the forest held more than she had ever imagined. She realized the importance of preserving its beauty and secrets. Carefully, she rolled up the map and placed it back in the wooden box, leaving it in the chamber for the next seeker to find. As she stepped back into the forest, she felt a sense of purpose. The hidden world she had discovered was not meant to be disturbed, but respected and protected. She followed the trail back to her grandmother's house, the sunlight filtering through the trees now seeming brighter and warmer. Sarah never spoke of her discovery to anyone, but she often returned to the woods, tending to the clearing and ensuring the forest remained untouched. She knew that someday, someone else would find the map and follow the trail, just as she had. Title: The River of Secrets. Chapter 1. The Whispering Waters. Emily had always been drawn to the river that ran through her small village of Ashbrook. The water sparkled under the sun and whispered softly as it flowed over smooth stones. People in the village often said the river held secrets, but no one had ever dared to discover them. Emily's curiosity was different. She wanted to know what made the river so enchanting. One crisp autumn morning, Emily decided to follow the river beyond the point where it disappeared into the forest. Armed with a small bag containing some bread, a notebook, and a pencil, she began her journey. The air was cool and carried the scent of pine. Birds chirped above her, and the sound of the river was her constant companion. Chapter 2. The Unseen Path. After walking for hours, Emily noticed a faint path that veered away from the main riverbank. The path was barely visible, covered in leaves and overgrown grass, but it seemed to beckon her. She hesitated, glancing back at the familiar parts of the river she had left behind. Then, taking a deep breath, she stepped onto the path. The further she walked, the quieter the forest became. The only sounds were the soft rustle of leaves and the gentle murmur of the river. She noticed unusual flowers growing along the path, their petals shimmering faintly as though dusted with silver. The trail felt magical, and Emily's excitement grew. Chapter 3. The Hidden Pool. The path led her to a clearing where the river formed a still, crystal-clear pool. The water was so pure that Emily could see the pebbles at the bottom, each one polished to perfection. At the edge of the pool, there was a stone pedestal with strange carvings. She approached it cautiously, her eyes tracing the intricate symbols etched into the stone. Among the carvings was a depiction of a key and a map. Emily realized this might be a clue to something hidden nearby. Looking around, she noticed a small wooden box partially submerged in the shallow water. Reaching in carefully, she retrieved it and found that it was locked. The box was old, its wood worn smooth by years of water and time. Chapter 4. The Map Unfolds. Curious about the box, Emily decided to search for the key. She examined the carvings on the pedestal again and noticed an arrow pointing toward a large tree on the far side of the pool. Beneath its roots, she found a small, rusted key. Her heart raced as she returned to the box and unlocked it. Inside, she found a rolled-up piece of parchment. Carefully unrolling it, she saw that it was a map. The map detailed the river and the surrounding forest, with several marked locations leading to a final spot labeled the Heart of Secrets. Emily's fingers trembled as she traced the path on the map. This was more than she had ever expected. Chapter 5. The Journey Begins. Following the map, Emily ventured deeper into the forest. The trail became more challenging, with dense foliage and uneven terrain. Along the way, she found signs that she was on the right track. Carved symbols on trees, stones placed in deliberate patterns, and even small bridges crossing narrower streams. At one point, she came across a group of deer drinking from the river. They didn't scatter when she approached. Instead, they watched her calmly, as if they understood her purpose. She felt a sense of connection to the forest and the creatures within it. Chapter 6. The Cave of Echoes. The map led her to a cave hidden behind a waterfall. The sound of the water crashing against the rocks was deafening, but Emily pushed through, her clothes soaked by the spray. Inside the cave, the air was cool and damp. The walls glistened with moisture, and faint echoes of dripping water filled the space. Deeper inside, she found another pedestal similar to the one by the pool. This pedestal held a small, glowing crystal. As Emily picked it up, the light from the crystal illuminated the cave, revealing paintings on the walls. The paintings told the story of an ancient village that had once thrived along the river. The villagers had lived in harmony with the forest, protecting its secrets and treasures. Chapter 7. The Heart of Secrets. The final location on the map was marked by a symbol resembling the glowing crystal in Emily's hand. Following the map's directions, she reached a grove where the river split into smaller streams. At the center of the grove stood a massive oak tree, its trunk as wide as a house and its branches stretching toward the sky. The tree radiated an aura of timeless wisdom. Emily noticed a hollow in the trunk, perfectly shaped to fit the crystal. Placing it inside, she stepped back as the ground trembled slightly. The tree's branches began to glow faintly, and a soft humming sound filled the air. A door appeared at the base of the tree, blending seamlessly with the bark. Inside the tree, Emily found a chamber filled with artifacts, books, and tools from the ancient village. There were journals detailing the villagers' lives and their deep respect for the river and forest. Emily realized she had stumbled upon a treasure trove of history and knowledge, preserved for generations. Chapter 8: The Keeper of Secrets. Among the artifacts, Emily found a small, engraved tablet. The inscription read, "To those who discover this place, you are now a keeper of secrets. Protect the river, the forest, and the harmony they bring." She felt a sense of responsibility settle over her. This wasn't just a discovery, it was a calling. Emily spent hours exploring the chamber, absorbing the wisdom left behind by the ancient villagers. When she finally emerged, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the forest. She made her way back to Ashbrook, carrying with her the knowledge of what lay hidden beyond the familiar riverbank. She never shared the full story with anyone, but became known in the village as the one who cared most for the river and its surroundings. Her quiet actions inspired others to respect and cherish the natural world, ensuring that the secrets of the river remained safe. Title: The Lonely Lighthouse Keeper. Chapter 1: The Keeper and the Storm. At the edge of a rugged coastline, where waves crashed against sharp rocks and seabirds wheeled in the sky, stood the old Beacon Point Lighthouse. The lighthouse had weathered 100 years of storms, its sturdy stone walls defying wind and sea. Inside, its keeper, Samuel Greaves, lived a solitary life. Samuel's days were routine. Each morning, he climbed the winding stairs to the top of the lighthouse to clean the massive lens. Its job was to guide ships safely past the dangerous rocks below. He polished the brass fixtures, adjusted the gears, and ensured the light burned brightly through the darkest nights. One evening, as Samuel prepared for the approaching storm, he noticed a faint light flickering on the horizon. Peering through his spyglass, he spotted a small fishing boat struggling against the growing waves. He immediately turned the lighthouse's beam toward the boat, hoping to guide it to safety. The storm hit with ferocity. Rain lashed against the lighthouse windows, and the wind howled like a living thing. Samuel stayed at his post all night, keeping the light steady, his eyes on the struggling boat. By dawn, the storm had passed, and the boat had vanished from sight. Chapter 2: The Letter in a Bottle. The next day, Samuel walked along the rocky shore, searching for any sign of the boat. Among the seaweed and driftwood, he found a glass bottle, its neck sealed with wax. Inside was a rolled-up piece of paper. Curious, he uncorked the bottle and carefully unrolled the letter. The letter read, "To the keeper of the light, thank you for your beacon. It saved us in the storm. We are safe because of you. With gratitude, Captain Elias Harper." Samuel's heart swelled with pride. His work, though lonely, had made a difference. He placed the letter in his pocket and returned to the lighthouse, feeling less alone than he had in years. Chapter 3: A Visitor from the Sea. Weeks passed, and Samuel continued his routine. One clear morning, he spotted a small figure climbing the rocky path toward the lighthouse. It was a young boy, his clothes tattered and his face streaked with salt and dirt. The boy introduced himself as Jack, explaining that he had been aboard the fishing boat during the storm. "Captain Harper is my father," Jack said. "He told me to find you and thank you in person." Samuel, unused to company, invited Jack inside and offered him a warm meal. Over soup and bread, Jack told Samuel about their journey and how the lighthouse had saved them from being dashed against the rocks. Samuel listened intently, his usually quiet home filled with the boy's animated tales. Chapter 4: A New Friendship. Jack stayed for several days, helping Samuel with his tasks around the lighthouse. He cleaned the brass fixtures, refilled the oil lamps, and even braved the heights to polish the lens. In return, Samuel taught Jack about the workings of the lighthouse, explaining the importance of its light to sailors at sea. As the days turned into weeks, Samuel and Jack formed an unlikely friendship. Jack's laughter filled the once silent halls of the lighthouse, and Samuel felt a sense of purpose beyond his duties. He shared stories of his younger days, and Jack shared his dreams of becoming a sailor like his father. Chapter 5: The Message in the Sky. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the sunset, a distant ship appeared on the horizon. Jack recognized the ship's flags and exclaimed, "That's my father's boat." Samuel adjusted the lighthouse beam, signaling the ship with a series of flashes. The ship responded with its own light, a coded message that Jack translated. It read, "We will anchor by morning. Prepare for departure." Though Jack was excited to reunite with his father, he couldn't hide his sadness at leaving the lighthouse. Samuel felt the same, but knew Jack needed to return to his family. Chapter 6: A Parting Gift. The next morning, Captain Harper arrived at the lighthouse, embracing his son and thanking Samuel for his kindness and courage. Before leaving, Jack handed Samuel a small, carved wooden boat he had made during his stay. To remember me, Jack said, his voice trembling. Samuel smiled and placed the boat on the mantel. He watched as Jack and his father sailed away, the lighthouse beam guiding their path one last time. Chapter 7. A Light That Never Fades. In the months that followed, Samuel often thought of Jack. The carved boat remained on his mantel, a reminder of their brief but meaningful friendship. Letters from Jack arrived occasionally, detailing his adventures at sea and the new places he'd visited. Samuel continued his work with renewed vigor, knowing that his light could change lives. The lonely keeper of the lighthouse had found connection and purpose, and though the halls of Beacon Point remained quiet, his heart was no longer empty. Title: The Magical Clockmaker. Chapter 1. A Town of Ticking Clocks. In the small town of Timely, life moved like clockwork. Every action followed a schedule. The people woke at sunrise, ate their meals at precise times, and rested when the stars filled the night sky. The heart of the town was the clockmaker's shop, a place where time itself seemed alive. Inside the shop, clocks of every shape and size ticked in harmony. The walls held the steady rhythm of time passing, and the air carried the scent of wood and metal. Behind the counter, Mr. Tock, an old man with a calm smile, worked patiently on the gears of a grand clock. The people admired his work, but rarely questioned how every clock remained perfect, even during storms or power outages. Ellie, a curious girl who loved to explore, often walked past the shop. One evening, she entered, drawn by the soft glow of a golden clock in the back of the room. Something about it felt special, as if it held a secret waiting to be discovered. Mr. Tock, noticing her interest, gestured toward the mysterious clock before returning to his work. Ellie felt a spark of adventure and decided to return the next day to learn more. Chapter 2. The Golden Key. The following evening, the sun dipped below the hills, painting the town in warm hues. Ellie stepped into the shop, her footsteps light on the wooden floor. On the counter lay a small, golden key, its surface glinting under the soft light of a nearby lamp. The golden key seemed to hum faintly, as if it held energy. Ellie felt her heartbeat quicken as she picked it up and turned toward the shimmering clock at the back of the shop. She placed the key into a hidden lock, and the room filled with a golden glow. The air around her seemed to ripple, and the ticking of the clocks grew louder and then stopped entirely. When the light faded, Ellie found herself standing in a forest unlike any she had ever seen. The trees shimmered as if made of precious stones, and soft light filtered through their sparkling leaves. The ground beneath her feet felt warm, and the air carried the scent of something ancient and magical. Chapter 3: A Forest Beyond Time. The timeless forest stretched in every direction, its paths winding between glowing trees. The ground sparkled faintly, and small creatures moved silently in the shadows. Ellie marveled at the beauty around her, but a sense of purpose urged her forward. The air in the forest carried a strange energy, alive and pulsating. Time here seemed to flow differently, as though the sun and moon shared the sky. Ellie noticed markings on some of the trees, faint lines that seemed to guide her path. The markings glowed softly, leading her deeper into the forest. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, and Ellie felt a presence nearby. Tiny creatures with wings like butterflies, but bodies like squirrels watched her curiously. They moved silently, their glowing eyes following her steps. Ellie felt no fear, only awe at the wonder of this magical place. Chapter 4: The Hourglass of Time. As Ellie moved deeper into the forest, the light grew dim, and a sense of unease crept over her. The sparkling trees gave way to darker, twisted shapes, and the air grew heavier. At the heart of the forest stood a black tower, its surface smooth and cold, like polished stone. At the top of the tower, Ellie could see the faint glow of a golden hourglass. The sand inside it flowed unevenly, as though something had disrupted its rhythm. The hourglass seemed to pulse with power, radiating energy that felt both comforting and overwhelming. Ellie realized the importance of the hourglass. It controlled the balance of time, not just in her world but in the timeless forest as well. Without it, time would unravel, causing chaos in both worlds. Ellie's determination grew stronger as she approached the base of the tower. Chapter 5: The Path of Shadows. The path to the tower was steep and lined with shadows. The trees here loomed like silent guardians, their branches reaching toward Ellie as if to block her way. The ground felt cold under her feet, and the air carried a faint hum, like a distant, broken melody. Ellie climbed the winding staircase inside the tower, each step echoing in the vast, empty space. The closer she got to the top, the heavier the air became, pressing down on her like an invisible weight. The glow of the hourglass grew brighter, lighting her path with a golden hue. When Ellie reached the top, she stood before the hourglass, its sands flowing unevenly. The pedestal beneath it was cracked, and faint lines of energy flickered across its surface. The hourglass pulsed, as if waiting for her to act. Chapter 6: Restoring Balance. Ellie approached the hourglass carefully, her hands trembling as she reached out to touch it. The moment her fingers brushed the golden frame, a surge of energy coursed through her. Images of time itself flashed before her eyes, moments of joy, sorrow, growth, and change. The pedestal beneath the hourglass began to glow, and Ellie felt the forest respond. The twisted trees straightened, their leaves regaining their shimmer. The air grew lighter, and the shadows retreated. Ellie's heart swelled with the realization that she was restoring balance. As the hourglass stabilized, the sand began to flow smoothly once more. A warm light filled the tower, radiating outward and spreading through the forest. The creatures that had been hiding emerged, their eyes filled with gratitude. Chapter 7. A New Beginning. With the hourglass restored, Ellie felt a gentle pull, guiding her back to the forest floor. The golden key appeared in her hand, warm and glowing. The forest around her seemed alive with celebration, its creatures and trees radiating joy. Ellie walked back through the forest, retracing her steps. The light grew brighter with each step, and soon she found herself standing in Mr. Talk's shop once again. The clocks on the walls ticked softly, their rhythms steady and comforting. Mr. Talk's kind eyes met hers, and he nodded, as if he already knew what had happened. Ellie placed the golden key back on the counter, her heart full of gratitude for the experience. Epilogue: The Gift of Time. Ellie left the shop with a new understanding of time. She realized it wasn't just about clocks or schedules, it was about moments. Moments of connection, discovery, and wonder. Time was a gift, and she vowed to cherish every second. The town of Timely continued its steady rhythm, but for Ellie, life felt richer. The magical forest, the glowing hourglass, and the lessons she had learned stayed with her, shaping the way she saw the world. Ellie knew that time was not just something to keep, it was something to live. Title: A Day to Remember. Chapter 1. The Unexpected Morning. Anna woke up to the sound of her alarm clock buzzing loudly. It was a cool autumn morning, and the sunlight peeked through the curtains. She stretched and sighed, knowing she had a big day ahead. Anna had recently moved to a new town and was still trying to settle in. Today, she planned to visit the community center to join a class and meet new people. As she prepared breakfast, she realized her bread had gone stale, and the milk was past its date. With a growling stomach, Anna decided to stop by the local bakery before heading to the center. She grabbed her bag and stepped out, the crisp air brushing against her face. Chapter 2. A Small Setback. The bakery was only a 10-minute walk from Anna's apartment. The streets were quiet, with only a few people out and about. As she approached the bakery, her stomach sank. A small sign on the door read, "Closed for renovations." Anna's excitement turned into frustration. She hadn't expected this challenge so early in the day. She decided to try the convenience store nearby. To her relief, they had fresh pastries and coffee. She bought a croissant and a small carton of milk, smiling at the cashier who wished her a good day. Chapter 3: The New Class. When Anna arrived at the community center, she felt nervous. The building was larger than she had imagined, and people of all ages walked in and out. She found her way to the classroom where a cooking class was about to start. The instructor, a cheerful woman named Maria, greeted her warmly and handed her an apron. The task for the day was to bake apple pies. Anna had never baked before, and the thought of making a pie from scratch intimidated her. As the class began, she struggled to roll the dough properly. Her first attempt tore apart, and flour dusted her clothes. She looked around and noticed others seemed to be doing much better. "Do you need some help?" Maria asked kindly, noticing Anna's frustration. Anna nodded, and Maria showed her a simpler technique. With Maria's guidance and encouragement, Anna's second attempt was much better. By the end of the class, she had managed to bake a small but presentable apple pie. Chapter 4: The Unexpected Challenge. Feeling accomplished, Anna left the community center with her pie in hand. She decided to walk through the park on her way home. The park was peaceful, with leaves crunching underfoot and children playing in the distance. As she crossed a small bridge, she heard a faint meowing sound. Curious, she followed the sound to a nearby bush. There, she found a tiny kitten tangled in a piece of netting. The kitten looked scared and helpless. Anna's heart sank as she realized the little creature needed help. She put her pie on a nearby bench and carefully untangled the netting. The kitten's fur was dirty, and it shivered in the cool air. Anna gently wrapped the kitten in her scarf and decided to take it to the local animal shelter. Chapter 5: A New Friend. The animal shelter was a short distance away, and Anna explained the situation to the staff. They thanked her for bringing the kitten in and assured her it would receive proper care. As Anna turned to leave, one of the staff members asked if she'd like to adopt the kitten after it recovered. Anna hesitated, but felt a connection to the little creature. She agreed to visit the kitten in a few days and decide then. The thought of having a pet brought a small smile to her face. Chapter 6: A Rewarding Evening. When Anna returned home, she was tired but content. She reheated a slice of her homemade pie and sat by the window, watching the sunset. The events of the day replayed in her mind, the challenges she had faced and the small victories she had achieved. For the first time since moving to the new town, Anna felt a sense of belonging. She had joined a class, learned a new skill, and even helped a tiny kitten in need. The day had not gone as planned, but it had been full of meaningful moments. Anna realized that life's challenges often led to unexpected rewards. As she finished her pie, she made a note to visit the community center again and to check on the kitten soon. Title: The New City Challenge. Chapter 1: The Big Move. Emma had never lived outside her small hometown, but a new job opportunity had brought her to the bustling city of Maple Heights. She stepped out of the train station, carrying a suitcase in one hand and a map in the other. The noise of the city was overwhelming. Cars honking, people rushing, and street vendors calling out to potential customers. It was nothing like the quiet streets she was used to. Her apartment was a tiny studio on the 4th floor of an old brick building. The space was barely big enough for her bed and a small table, but it was hers. Emma spent her first evening unpacking and arranging her belongings, trying to make the space feel like home. As she looked out the window, she saw the city lights twinkling, a mix of excitement and nervousness filling her chest. Chapter 2: Getting Lost. On her first day of work, Emma left early, determined to make a good impression. She had memorized the bus route and even written down the stops. However, the city had other plans. A traffic delay caused her to miss her stop, and she ended up in an unfamiliar neighborhood. Panic set in as she realized she didn't know how to get back on track. She checked her phone, but the map app wasn't loading. Taking a deep breath, she decided to ask for help. A friendly-looking woman standing outside a cafe pointed Emma in the right direction and even offered to call a cab for her. Emma thanked her profusely and managed to arrive at work just in time, a little flustered but relieved. Chapter 3: The First Hurdle. Emma's new job as a junior graphic designer was exciting but challenging. On her first day, her manager assigned her a project with a tight deadline. She needed to design a promotional flyer for an upcoming event. Emma stayed late at the office, working hard to meet the expectations. When she finally finished, she walked home under the glow of streetlights, feeling a mix of exhaustion and pride. The next morning, her manager reviewed her work and gave her some feedback. "You've got potential, but don't be afraid to think outside the box," he said. Emma nodded, taking his words as a challenge to improve. Chapter 4: Finding Confidence. Over the next few weeks, Emma settled into her routine. She still got lost occasionally, but each time, she learned a little more about the city. She discovered a cozy coffee shop near her office and made it her go-to spot for a quick break. The barista, a cheerful young man named Ryan, always greeted her with a smile and remembered her favorite order. Emma also joined a weekend art class to meet new people and improve her skills. At first, she felt out of place among the more experienced artists, but the instructor encouraged her to focus on her unique style. Slowly, she began to feel more confident in her abilities. Chapter 5. The Unexpected Challenge. One Friday evening, Emma was assigned to present her flyer designs to a potential client. Public speaking had always been her weakness, and the thought of standing in front of a room full of people made her stomach churn. She spent hours practicing in front of the mirror, going over every detail of her presentation. When the day came, her hands trembled as she set up her slides. But as she began to speak, she focused on the work she was proud of. By the time she finished, the client smiled and said, "Great job. I'm impressed by your creativity." Emma felt a wave of relief and pride wash over her. Chapter 6. A New Beginning. As the months passed, Emma began to feel at home in Maple Heights. She knew the bus routes by heart, had built a small circle of friends, and even found a favorite park where she went to relax after work. Her confidence at her job grew, and she started taking on more ambitious projects. One evening, as she sat in her apartment sketching ideas for a new design, she thought about how far she had come. Moving to the city had been terrifying, but it had also given her the chance to grow in ways she never expected. She smiled, knowing that she had faced the challenges head-on and found a new sense of independence and purpose. Title: Starting anew in a New Town. Chapter 1. A Fresh Start. Lila stepped off the train with a small suitcase and a heart full of hope. The town of Meadowbrook was her chance to start over. After years of living in a big city, she had longed for a quieter life. Meadowbrook's cobblestone streets, quaint shops, and friendly faces seemed like the perfect place to rebuild herself. Her new apartment was a modest one-bedroom above a local bakery. The smell of fresh bread wafted through her windows every morning, giving her a sense of warmth and comfort. The first night, she sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the sunset over the hills. It was peaceful, and for the first time in months, she felt a sense of belonging. Chapter 2. Challenges at Work. Lila had secured a job as a secretary at the town's library. She loved books, but the job was more challenging than she had expected. The library was old, with shelves that stretched high and a cataloging system that hadn't been updated in decades. Her boss, Mrs. Grant, was a strict woman with sharp eyes and little patience for mistakes. On her first day, Lila accidentally misfiled a batch of historical documents. Mrs. Grant's scolding left her embarrassed, but she resolved to learn quickly. Each evening, Lila stayed late to familiarize herself with the library's system. Slowly, she began to understand its quirks and developed a rhythm to her work. Chapter 3: A Friendly Face. One rainy afternoon, Lila was struggling to carry a stack of books when a voice called out, "Need a hand?" She turned to see a young man with a friendly smile and an umbrella in hand. His name was Ethan, a regular patron of the library and a local history enthusiast. He helped her with the books and introduced himself. Ethan's enthusiasm for Meadowbrook's history was infectious. He shared stories about the town's past, its founding families, and the festivals that brought everyone together. Over time, his visits became the highlight of Lila's days. They would often chat about books, the town, and their dreams for the future. Chapter 4: The Festival Challenge. As winter approached, the town prepared for its annual Winter Lantern Festival. Mrs. Grant tasked Lila with organizing the library's exhibit for the festival. It was a daunting task, involving historical artifacts, rare books, and coordinating with local volunteers. Lila's nerves were on edge, but she was determined to make it a success. She enlisted Ethan's help, and together they sorted through the library's archives. They discovered a forgotten collection of letters written by the town's founders, which added a personal touch to the exhibit. Lila spent hours designing the displays, making sure every detail was perfect. Chapter 5: Overcoming Doubts. As the festival approached, Lila faced setbacks. A delivery of display cases was delayed, and one of the rare books she planned to feature was accidentally damaged. Doubts crept in, and she wondered if she was cut out for the job. Ethan reminded her of how far she had come since her first day. "You've worked so hard, and it shows," he said. "The town will love what you've put together." Encouraged by his words, Lila pushed through the challenges, finding creative solutions to the problems that arose. Chapter 6: A Night to Remember. The Winter Lantern Festival was magical. The town square glowed with hundreds of lanterns, and the air buzzed with laughter and music. Lila's exhibit was a hit. Residents admired the letters and artifacts, many commenting on how the display brought the town's history to life. Mrs. Grant, who rarely gave compliments, told Lila she had done an excellent job. Lila's heart swelled with pride. Ethan, standing beside her, handed her a small lantern. "Make a wish," he said. Lila closed her eyes and whispered a wish, letting the lantern float into the sky. As she watched it join the others, She felt a sense of accomplishment and happiness she hadn't felt in years. Meadowbrook had become more than just a place to start over. It had become home. Title: A Simple Transformation. Chapter 1. The Routine. James's mornings were always the same. He woke up at 6:30 a.m., brewed a cup of coffee, and sat by the window of his modest apartment in the small town of Everbrook. The view never changed: the quiet street, a bakery opening its doors, and the mailman delivering letters. James, a teacher at the local middle school, loved the predictability of his life. On his walk to work, he greeted familiar faces. There was Mrs. Turner, who tended her roses, and Mr. Lee, who opened his grocery store each morning. Life in Everbrook was peaceful, but for James, it was starting to feel too quiet. He often wondered if this was all there was to life. Chapter 2. A New Neighbor. One Saturday morning, a moving truck pulled up to the apartment next door. James peeked through his window and saw a young woman struggling to carry boxes. Without hesitation, he went outside to offer help. "Hi, I'm James," he said, lifting a heavy box from the sidewalk. "I'm Sophie," she replied with a grateful smile. Sophie had moved from the city to escape the chaos and start fresh in Everbrook. They chatted as they carried boxes up the narrow stairs. Sophie shared stories about her work as a freelance designer, and James found her energy refreshing. Chapter 3. An Unexpected Invitation. The following week, Sophie knocked on James's door. "I'm hosting a small dinner to meet some neighbors. Would you like to come?" she asked. James hesitated. He wasn't used to social gatherings outside work, but agreed. That evening, he found himself in Sophie's cozy apartment, filled with soft lighting and the aroma of roasted vegetables. A few other neighbors were there, and the atmosphere was warm and inviting. As they ate, Sophie mentioned an idea to organize a community art project. She wanted to bring the town together by painting a mural on an old wall near the park. The others were intrigued, but James was skeptical. Everbrook wasn't the type of town for such projects. Chapter 4. The First Brushstroke. Despite his doubts, James found himself at the park the following weekend, holding a paintbrush. Sophie's enthusiasm was contagious, and her vision for the mural, a vibrant depiction of Everbrook's history, was compelling. Families, teenagers, and even seniors came to contribute, each adding their unique touch. James painted a small section showing the schoolhouse where he taught. As the mural began to take shape, he felt a sense of pride he hadn't experienced before. The project brought the community together, and he realized how much he had underestimated his neighbor's creativity and spirit. Chapter 5. A Personal Challenge. Inspired by the mural's success, Sophie encouraged James to step out of his comfort zone more often. When the school announced a talent show fundraiser, Sophie signed him up to play his guitar, an instrument he hadn't touched in years. James protested, but eventually agreed. In the weeks leading up to the show, he practiced in the evenings. The nerves were intense, but Sophie cheered him on. When the night of the show arrived, James performed a simple but heartfelt song. The audience clapped enthusiastically, and for the first time, James felt the thrill of taking a risk and succeeding. Chapter 6. A New Perspective. Life in Everbrook began to feel different. The mural became a beloved landmark, and James's bond with the community deepened. He found himself joining Sophie for morning runs, helping organize book clubs at the library, and even volunteering at the bakery during busy weekends. One evening, as James and Sophie walked past the mural, now complete and vibrant, she turned to him. "Do you still think Everbrook is too quiet?" she teased. James laughed. "Not anymore. I think it just needed a spark." Title: City Challenges and New Beginnings. Chapter 1. The Big Arrival. Ella stepped off the bus into the bustling city of Harborview. The air smelled of rain and fresh coffee, and the streets buzzed with life. She had left her quiet hometown to take a job at a small publishing company. With a suitcase in one hand and her phone's GPS in the other, she made her way to her new apartment. The apartment was tiny, with just enough space for a bed, a small table, and a kitchenette. The window overlooked a busy street lined with cafes and shops. Though it wasn't much, it was her first step toward independence. Chapter 2. A Rocky Start. Ella's first day at work didn't go as planned. She arrived 10 minutes late after taking the wrong train, and her manager wasn't impressed. The publishing office was small but fast-paced. Ella struggled to keep up with the constant stream of emails and assignments. That evening, she sat on her bed feeling defeated. She called her best friend, Lisa, back home. "I don't know if I can do this," Ella admitted. Lisa's voice was calm and steady. "Give it time. The first week is always the hardest. You'll find your rhythm." Encouraged, Ella decided to prepare better for the next day. Chapter 3. The Friendly Neighbor. The next morning, Ella met her neighbor, Mrs. Patel, a kind woman in her 60s who lived across the hall. Seeing Ella's stressed expression, Mrs. Patel invited her in for tea. The warm smell of spices and the cozy apartment instantly comforted Ella. The city can feel overwhelming at first, Mrs. Patel said. But it has its own charm. You'll find your place here. She gave Ella a small container of homemade curry. Dinner, in case you're too tired to cook. Ella thanked her, feeling a little less alone. Chapter 4. Small Wins. At work, Ella began taking small steps to improve. She made a checklist for her tasks and started arriving early. When a colleague needed help editing a manuscript, Ella volunteered. Her attention to detail impressed her manager, who began trusting her with more responsibilities. Outside of work, Ella explored the city. She found a quiet bookstore tucked away in an alley and a park where street musicians played. Slowly, she started to feel connected to her new home. Chapter 5. The Unexpected Challenge. One afternoon, Ella was asked to organize an important client presentation. It was a chance to prove herself, but she felt nervous. As she prepared, the printer broke down and some of her files got corrupted. Panic set in. She took a deep breath and remembered Lisa's advice to stay calm. Ella improvised, emailing the files to a nearby print shop and picking them up just in time. The presentation went smoothly, and the clients were impressed. Her manager praised her problem-solving skills. Chapter 6. A Moment of Reflection. That evening, Ella treated herself to dinner at a small cafe she had discovered. As she sipped her tea, she reflected on her journey. The city no longer felt as intimidating. She had faced challenges, but also found small joys and kind people along the way. Mrs. Patel's words came back to her, "You'll find your place here." Ella smiled, knowing she was well on her way.